The second season of Tekken 8 has brought upon us one of the most stupid and ludicrous balancing states ever made for a modern fighting game, and is arguably gonna be remembered as the sequence of decisions made by a fighting game developer that has hurt the reputation of their game the most. But even with taking that into account and with Tekken 8 in an abyss, I want to talk about why I think that there is still faith and a future for Tekken 8 as a game. So let's get into it. And well, for the first point, I really want to discuss actually the gameplay, and I want to put some of my own matches in the background, because when you think about it, with all the bad balancing decisions around Tekken 8, the player count for the game is lower and lower. The more time that passes, the less number of players that want to try the game out and play it, because the experience can be so bad that it's just not worth it, right? But when you think about it, this has a secondary consequence, which is that most or a significant amount of the players that are still hop on the game are actually really good, because they are insanely try-hard Tekken players. And for me, it is quite eye-opening that when you play against these players that had insanely high prowess and maybe play some very fundamental-based characters, you can actually value how much fundamentals still matter, even with how volatile the game is. And you can win full sets only based on very basic and strong fundamentals, like poking, frame trapping, punishment, also playing decent neutral defense. And it is again eye-opening that it is even possible to experience a match in this game that doesn't feel that stupid and volatile at all, depending of course on the character that you're facing and the playstyle of the other player. But a lot of the time, this insanely high prowess, really good players play based on fundamentals. They don't really cheese you that much, because they still understand that the biggest weapon or value that you can have as a player consistently is still fundamentals, even with the awful bad balancing state that the game has. And to me personally, that's a huge silver lining, because if this game was even more scrubby, right, if it was as stupid as hell, one of the most ridiculous fighting games ever, fundamentals would not matter that much at the highest level of play, and of course they would not necessarily actually win you matches consistently. They would matter sometimes, but a lot of the time you would just get wrecked by the options that the other player can use on top of you if they know how to cheese you very well. And don't get me wrong, that still happens a lot. There is still a lot of matches that you lose, mostly because of the wrecking ball of offensive options that get thrown at you. But if there is still a chance for you to win consistently based on fundamentals, it is a big hope for the future of the game, because it means that there is a maybe silver lining out there, that there is a way to balance the game in which you maximize the relevance of those fundamentals that right now are still important, but get sometimes, overshadowed by the stupidity of the game. So that's kind of the first point that I wanted to make, because I feel like it is very relevant to value the fact that you can still win by being a good player actually, and not just mashing like a freaking monkey. And it is something that I don't see many people talk about, and I really want to have a good approach to this video and not just make a rant around how bad the balance state of the game is, even though it is, right? So that's kind of my first point, the value of fundamentals is still out there. Is it heavily overshadowed? Yeah, but it still exists. Hey, just in the case that you've been enjoying this content until now, or find it interesting to discuss about fighting games, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to help the channel to keep growing. And now, let's keep the discussion. Okay, and now we're moving to the second point that I want to discuss, and it is also gameplay center, but it's more related to design than balance, if that makes sense. And it is that, in my opinion, and one of my arguments is that the core mechanics of Tekken 8 are actually really interesting, by design on paper. The problem is that they're balanced like absolute crap. But when you think about them just by the concept, right? For example, heat engagers, heat smashes, even rage arts, and the new tailspin options for combos and stuff like that, all of them could be really interesting, fun, and unique mechanics to the Tekken franchise. The problem is that all of them feel like a wrecking ball of offensive stuff, like I said earlier in the other section. And when you go, for example, to something like Heat, it sounds very fun and interesting that your character can access a universal enhanced state in which they have unique moves that have new animations and are very strong, but there is a limited access to them, and there's actually some also like risk to it. The problem is that none of those specifics are actually there. Like there is almost no risk of using heat, and also there is like no limit also to using it, because there are so many moves that give you more heat that you make it recover. Also, like there is heat every single round. It's not a limited resource, you know, it's basically part of the base state of your character. If you want to, if you want to play like that, you can almost do it. So in that sense, I don't think that heat, for example, is a bad mechanic. The problem is that by design can be good, but by balancing it's absolute dog shit. And in that same context, I think that you can say almost the same opinion about most of the mechanics in Tekken 8. Like if, for example, tail spins and combos were limited to only using one each combo, it would be fun to use and not as broken, the combos wouldn't be as long and the damage would be lower. Then if heat, for example, was only able to be used 2 times each match or 1 time, and it is actually a resource that you have to gain, you know, that you actually like fill over time, it would be better. Also, if, for example, low heat smashes were actually punishable on block, you know, -15, they were launchable, you know, it will also be better because it is actually a mix that has a big risk to it. And then we also have stuff like rage arts, for example, right? I love cinematic supers. They are one of my favorite things in fighting games and in the fighting game genre overall, and some like rage arts in Tekken 8 look incredible. They are great, but why do we have to deal with a universal parry or reversal every single round? Like there is a reason why 2D fighting games have kind of, you know, already solved how to use these universal reversals, and you can generally use them only once in a fight, and it has been like that for over 20 years. It's not something new. It's something that developers have kind of already cracked the code around, but it seems like Tekken 8 developers not. So there is a lot of potential, and I think that the mechanics are interesting on paper. The problem is that they're balanced, again, like absolute crap. So I want to defend the mechanics by design, and I think that if you actually balance them well, this could be one of the most interesting Tekken games ever. But they have to take that step and actually, you know, make those mechanics significantly weaker. And now we get into the last point that I wanted to talk about, which is that there's more to Tekken 8 than just balancing. And there is just so many things of this game that to me make it a good product overall when you try, and even though it is really hard, you know, when you try to make the effort to not look only at the horrible balancing that they have made. But there is more, right? Like this game has pretty good single player content, you know, like the story mode is really fun, even though the story is kind of weird and doesn't make that much sense. Like just for playing and having fun, it is one of the best single player modes out there in any modern fighting game. Also, when Tekken 8 came out, it had a pretty like good roster, dude. Like the newcomers of the game, Reina, Victor, they are pretty good, freaking and cool characters. The roster size was bigger than when Street Fighter 6 came out, and the graphics of this game, the visuals are also some of the best, to me actually the best of the big 3, you know, when you compare it to Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. To me Tekken looks the best, even though some rage arts are really bad. They still look really good when it comes to the raw graphics. And obviously some of these things also need to be better over time. Not only there needs to be balance changes, but also more quality of life features for the game. Like we need more game modes than just Tekken Ball, for example, for the more casual and just kind of like party mode players. Also the monetization and like the battle pass arguably needs to be better. It's not that good, even though it is better than when the game started. It is still not the best. But I just want to make, you know, this kind of like overarching argument that Tekken 8 as an overall package, to me, it deserves a much better reputation than what maybe it has right now. And obviously everything else gets overshadowed by the bad balancing, and that's fine. Like the bad balance and the horrible decisions by the devs when it comes to balancing should be the main topic of discussion, but I just wanted to give maybe like a bigger perspective and have a relatively neutral or even like a small positive attitude towards the future of the game, because I want Tekken 8 to be a good game and I feel like it has the potential to be one of the best Tekkens ever, but they really need to do their job. And hopefully they do. And as a last point before the video ends, as a closing thought, this is not the only, you know, modern fighting game that has had an awful season or balance patch. And I think that the Tekken community has taken the horrible state of the game in a maybe much more serious take than other fighting games. Like for example, when you think of other games that had really bad balance patches like Dragon Ball FighterZ or even Street Fighter to some degree and Street Fighter 5. And then you have maybe older games that are very like not balanced at all, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, for example, incredibly unbalanced game, but it's still legendary. And I think there is just less tolerance towards any sort of like unjust balance patches in more modern fighting games, because it is just already enough time of playing broken fighting games, right? Like, we've been playing broken fighting games in the 90s, and maybe we don't need them anymore. But I think that the game can overcome that. You know, that's kind of what I mean with this last thing. Like, it's not like it's the only game ever that got an awful balance patch and an awful season. Hopefully, the developers do their job right, and I just wanted to make a bigger picture discussion. I hope that you liked it. If you didn't, let me know in the comments why, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Hopefully, Tekken 8 it's able to make a huge comeback in Season 3, and see you on the next one.